Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So today, basically, I created this earlier. This isn't anything crazy, but it's just basically these videos are for starters, and this is what we're going to do today. And this is going to be our last video about learning HTML. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to run it. Okay, so let's get into our coding session. So for the past video, I told you guys that we need doc type to specify that this works on each basically HTML page or on basically each browser such as Google Chrome, such as Firefox and more, and then HTML to tell it that this is HTML file. And then we're gonna start with a head. So head means top, and now I'm gonna give it a title, and giving it a title I'm gonna say that this is my last page. And yeah, so now in here let's get to style. So this is the first time that you're learning style, so let me explain what is style. So basically in HTML there's something called CSS, and basically HTML is the back, it's the bone, the structure of the website, and as CSS gives coloring and basically a lot of stuff, but it's just mainly design and coloring. So this is, and you gotta connect it both to same page. But what we're going to do is just we're going to do in one single page today. So and we're not going to do anything crazy. So to set a comment in HTML, this is how you do it. So in here I'm going to say this is our CSS, and then in here I'm going to go star. Okay, now let's get into real coding and let's start coding. So in here, let's go and open our let's do a box sizing. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a nav bar, and we're going to style it, and we're going to give it a background color, we're going to give it a font, and we're going to make it look pretty good. So I'm going to say box sizing, and in here I'm going to say a border box. And then after doing that, I'm gonna close the bracket. So now that I'm done with the top of the page, I'm gonna design the body. So in here I'm gonna go body, then I'm gonna go open the bracket, then I'm gonna give it a margin. The margin for here, I'm gonna give it 0. And after the margin, normally you always give a padding. In here I'm gonna give it a padding, and then I want to give it a font. So in here, the font family I'm gonna give it, and the most basically used one in HTML, it's always Arial, the first one. Then I'm gonna come here and I'm done with designing my body, so I'm gonna close it. Now let's design the page style. So basically that was the top of the page. Now I'm gonna give it another comment, so I'm gonna say design the page style, and then I'm gonna come here, say star, and let's get into it. So now I'm gonna start with a header bracket open, and then here I'm gonna give it a background color. Now this is basically for not the full background color, but for the background color of our navbar. Now here I'm gonna give it a hashtag 333, and in here I'm gonna go down, and in here I'm gonna give inside of that, so the text that you will see, it's gonna be white. And then inside of that I'm gonna give it a padding once more, and I'm gonna give it 20px. And after the padding, I want the text to be in the center, so I'm gonna go text align center. Yes. Now I'm gonna come down here and finish our bracket. Now this is our nav bar. So nav, I'm gonna say nav, and I'm saying background color. Now in here I'm gonna give it, let's say F2, say F2, 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 which is white. Now in here I'm gonna give it another padding, and in here I'm gonna give it a 10px, And then in here I'll give it a text align. Again, once again, I want it to be in the center, so I'm gonna say center. And now I want to give it a nav ULL. Basically, when you click on it, takes you to those pages. Now I want to style it, give it a better color. So in here I'm gonna say nav ULL, open our bracket, then I'm gonna say list the style, and in here I'm gonna say none. Then in here I'm gonna give it a margin, and in here I'm gonna say 0. Now after giving it a margin, I'm gonna say I want to give it a padding. Then in here I'm gonna say 0. Then I'm gonna come here and close our bracket. After giving it basically all of those, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna give it basically the nav URL line, basically the line on our nav line. So in here I'm gonna say nav URL li. Then I'm gonna start opening another bracket. Then I'm saying display, and in here I'm gonna say inline inline dash block, first one. Then on in here I'm gonna come and say margin to the right dash right. Then in here I'm gonna say a 10 px. Come here, close the bracket. Now I'm gonna give it basically our URL a color. So let's go down. Now in here I'm gonna say nav URL li a space, give it a open the bracket. Now in here I'm gonna say, nope, I meant to say color. So in here I'm gonna say color. Again, I'm gonna give it hashtag 33, and in here I'm gonna give it a text decoration. And a text decoration, I'm just gonna give it a none. And let's give it another padding. There we go. In here I'm gonna give our padding a 5 px, and here I'm gonna give it a 10 px as well. After doing that, I'm gonna give it a border. So I'm gonna say border results, and in here I'm gonna give it a 4 px. Say 4 px. Now after doing that, I'm gonna give it a transition. So we want our background to have a transition, so I'm gonna say transition background color, and in here I'm gonna say background slash color, and then never mind, didn't do it. So in here I'm gonna say background slash color. Then in here I'm gonna give it a 0.3 seconds, comma. Then in here I'm gonna say color, it's gonna be set to 0.3 like you said. So let's say comma. There we go. Now after doing that, come here, close the bracket. Now let's say I want to give my hover on our nav bar. So in here I'm gonna say nav URL li a, and then in here I'm gonna say hover. Now I'm here. After doing so, I'm gonna open my bracket. Now in here I'm gonna give it a background color. The background color again is gonna be -2D. Here inside of that though, I want it to be white. Otherwise everything's gonna be same color and you cannot see. So in here I'm gonna say white. After do that, let's give it a main. So let's go and move to our main. So in here I'm gonna say main, open our bracket. Now I'm gonna give it a display, and then in here I can give it blocks, but I am gonna go with flex. And in here I'm gonna give it a justify content, but in here I'm gonna say I want a space between, I want it clean, so I'm gonna say space. Now let's give it a margin, and in here I'm gonna give it a 20 px. Now that we did our main, we want to do our section. So in here I'm gonna say section, come here, open our bracket, and in here I'm gonna say flex spaces, yes. Now in here I'm gonna say 45%. Now I'm here, I'm gonna give it a background color, so I'm gonna say background color. Now in here once again I'm gonna go basically inside of F2 I'm gonna say F9, 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 and then yeah. So after here I'm gonna give it a border size. So here I'm gonna say border, but this time it's just gonna be 1px and it's gonna be solid. And I will like to give it another color, so in here I'm gonna go CSS, there we go. And then after here, given a border, I'm gonna give it a border dash radius, there we go. And then I'm gonna give it a 4px. After doing so, I'm gonna give it another padding. The padding is gonna be 20px. After doing all of that, I'm gonna come here and close it. So now, just a reminder, we haven't even done anything. Like if I run this right now, the full layer is just empty because we are just still coloring it. So after doing so, I did everything. I did the main, I did the body. Now I want to give a little bit of coloring to our H2 because we're gonna have an H2. So in here I'm gonna say section, and you already know H2 stands for basically header 2. So I'm gonna say section 2. I'm gonna give it a coloring, and the color is just going to be the same. Now I'm going to give it a border, and I want the border to be in the bottom, so I'm going to say 1px, yes, and then I want it to be solid, and then here I want to give it dash ccc. And then after doing that, I want to give it a padding, but this padding it's going to be in the bottom because now we're moving to the bottom, so everything's going to be in the bottom. So I'm going to say bottom. Then in here I'm going to give it a 10px. Then in here I'm going to give it also the margin, but in the margin once again it's going to be on the bottom, and I'm going to say 20px. I'm going to come here and close it. Now I want to style my paragraph. So whatever paragraph I put, I want to style them. So I'm going to say section P, and then in here I'm going to say color. Then on here I'm going to say 666. And then in here I'm gonna say margin dash bottom, and then in here I'm gonna say 10px. Okay, now that we did that, this was our first paragraph, but I want to do a section in our last paragraph. So I'm gonna say, or basically known as a last child. So in here I'm gonna say section P open specify it's going to be a last child, and then come here, open the bracket once again. After doing that, I want to say I want this margin to be at the bottom. It should automatically show. Oh, maybe. Oh, that's why. So we'll see if shows. There we go, because I'm not trying to type all of that. So margin, then close the bracket. Now let's give, now that we did all the paragraph and everything, what we're going to do is we're going to give a little style to our, let me go down, we're going to give a little style to our footer. So in here I'm going to say footer, then open our bracket once again. Now I'm going to give a background color to our footer. So in here I'm going to say -33, and then I'm gonna come down here, I'm gonna say color, then in here it's gonna be nothing but white. Then in here I'm gonna give it a padding, yeah, 10, and then in here I'm gonna say I want the text to be in the center once again. Then I'm gonna come here and close it. Now this is going to be our media, and so do I really need to so if you want to put a comma, you can just say media queries. This is going to be your media queries that you need to style, but it's up to you. No, it's up to you. You have to do it to make it look better. So in here I'm going to say media, there we go. Now in here I'm going to give it a max width, and then I'm gonna say 768. Notice that I know all the sizes because I did this before, not like 10 minutes ago maybe, to just see how it looks like and if it's our thing, but it does. Now after doing that, I'm gonna go flex decoration, but in here I'm gonna put column, then in here I'm gonna close our bracket. And once doing that, we are getting an error. And why? Oh, we said media max with 760px with bracket open. We said media main, and then we said footer. Oh, we forgot the section part. Okay, so we're gonna say section bracket open. Now I'm gonna say I want the margin to be on the bottom, so I'm gonna say bottom. No. So here I'm gonna say margin slash bottom. There we go. And then after doing that, I'm gonna say 20px. Then I'm gonna come here, close the bracket, come here, close the bracket. Then now that we are done with all of our style, we're gonna say style. There we go. So now that you're finished with your style, we're gonna start doing a little bit of HTML, and it's not gonna be that much of an HTML. So we're gonna start with saying our head, and then we're gonna give it a body. We're gonna say body. And here I'm gonna give it a header. So I'm gonna come here, say dash. No, what? Header. There we go. Now in here I'm gonna say h1. This is my last HTML lesson. And then what I'm going to do is let's create our nav bar. We didn't create the nav bar, we just kind of style it. So don't get confused between them. So in here, after creating the nav bar, I'm gonna come here and basically make a URL. And then inside of that URL, I'm gonna say, go down a bit, the page. Instead of that URL, I'm gonna give it an li, basically to link them. In here, I'm gonna say a, and then I'm gonna say a href, and I'll explain why I did that. And in here, I'm gonna say index page, which we already have that. And after here, I'm gonna say that this is home page. Now copying this and copying this. And in here I'm gonna say, now this might not work because we don't have it, but I'll explain what I mean. Because you need to, in here, let's say you click on it, takes you to another page. So in here I'm gonna say a contact.html, and in here I'm gonna say about, and then in here I'm gonna say contact. Okay, after we're finishing with all of that, now that we're done with header, let's go to the main and let's create our main. So in here I'm gonna come back here and I'm gonna say main. Now in main I'm gonna open our section, and opening our section I'm gonna give it an h2. In here I'm gonna say about me, and then I'm gonna give it a paragraph under. So here I'm gonna say I'm a happy man. And if this doesn't work, I can just go, oh, this is the thing is like, this is what I'm using Linux, so that's the challenging part. So in here I'm gonna go basically see if that works. If I go basically the start and the dot button in Windows, I'm gonna copy this, see if this works, and if it doesn't, okay, there we go. So now I did that. Let's open another paragraph. In here I'm gonna say, now you know a bit of HTML, go and have fun. Okay, uh and then let's just say this is for you. You can just link it. You can just say check more work, check. And once you're done, you can close your sections. Now that we are done with our main, also we don't need this for now because I'm not done with our main. But now that we are done, we're gonna open another section. So I'm gonna go enter. Then in here I'm gonna say another section, and in here I'm gonna say h2. Now this is gonna be for our contact information. So in here I'm gonna say information, and in here I'm gonna give it another paragraph. So in here I'm gonna say email. Now I'm gonna give my YouTube name. So in here I'm gonna say Momo Jokari. Then in here let's give it another one. So in here I'm gonna say phone. Then in here I'm gonna give it 123 123 123. Well, this is just because I don't want to give a real phone number, but you can do. And in here I'm gonna say contact me with social media. Now this is where it gets pretty good, because now we are gonna start to basically link with social media, and this is gonna be pretty useful that you need to know this. So in here I'm gonna say UL, and in here we're gonna link it to our social media. And like I said, you always need to go li and then a harf to link anything. In here let's link it. So in here I'm gonna go and I'm gonna search for basically Twitter. Click on Twitter. Let's just copy this, go back in here, and then in here I'm gonna say http Twitter or whatever. Then after this I can come here and close our bracket. Now in here I can say whatever the name was, and in this case it's Twitter. So I can go Twitter. There we go. And I can basically do the same thing, just copy this, in my opinion, save time. And here let's say you want to do LinkedIn. So I'm gonna say linked, and it should show, but link. So in here let's go say linked, and let's come here and let's copy this, and let's go back to our and in here I'm gonna say YouTube. Now for this one, since this is available, so I'm gonna say YouTube. Then in here I'm gonna say I'm gonna put my own YouTube. So I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna put my YouTube. Now that we did all of that, UL, and we're gonna come down here and we're gonna finish our section. Now we are done with our main as well, so I'm gonna come here and say main. Now let's say you don't want anyone to copy paste your basically HTML file, so we're gonna open our footer. And earlier we get our footer, a bit of customization, so we're gonna give it in here too. And here I'm gonna say copy. Here I'm gonna say 2023. This is my page, because anyone, and I'll explain why we need this, right? And then you can come down here and say body. Then I'm gonna come here once we're done with our full HTML page. So now we're done with our whole thing. We're gonna go here. We're gonna go save. gonna come here, press enter. Now this is our page that we just created it. So we have an actual page where it takes us to link, Twitter, LinkedIn, and in YouTube it actually takes us to my YouTube channel. So you have a lot of stuff, and you have this buttons where you hover over it, it actually covers it up. And in here, let me explain why we need this. So let's say someone clicks, they can go and inspect. Now once again, I'm using basically I'm using Linux, so I don't know how this works, but basically in normal they can copy and paste it. But anyways, now let's say you want to link it to the actual pages. So in here, let's go back and now I'm only going to do this for one page about, because it's really easy. So in here, what you can do, you can go HTML, and then let's just say you want to go Doctape, then you want to go HTML, then in here we're gonna go HTML. But in here I'm not gonna put anything crazy. So in here I'm just gonna start with saying, I know I said you need it before, but for the sake of time I'm gonna say hello, this is about page. And then in here I'm gonna go H1. And now I'm gonna close it. Now I'll go ahead and save this inside of it, make sure the path is right, and I'm gonna say about. So I'm gonna come back here and we're gonna change the link, make sure it shows up. So in here, if I go about, now it shows up. Now I can go Control S. Now I can go back to our Firefox. Now if I refresh the page, now we have a working page. So now if I click on about, it takes us to another page. It says hello, this is about page. But contact, we didn't do it for contact, that's why it doesn't work. This is it. So now you learn about coloring, you learn about basically some cool stuff, some new stuff. So, and this is going to be our last HTML page. So go ahead, have some fun, and thank you for watching. Yeah, thank you.